Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our first story features a rock star employee whose success becomes a little too much for a jealous coworker. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Jealous coworker tries to sabotage my sales, ends up losing his job instead. I'm a service writer for a vehicle maintenance/repair shop. I have the capability to actually do the work, but I make more money for my company in sales, service, and parts. So my job started when I came in 2 years ago from a different company. They hired me because not only can I sell, but I can complete the services that I sell. Fast forward about 6 months, and they're so impressed with my sales that they inform me that I'm only to perform the work if there's absolutely no other technicians available to complete the job within a timely manner. I would still be receiving my bonus for sales, as the name implies, sales bonus. Great. So I get on it. I'm breaking records, bringing in new clients, teaching others to sell like I do. I'm making good money. Fast forward a bit more, and they transfer me to another location where I'm quickly outshining their top service writer who was never given the order to only sell. I'm still expected to just sell. I checked when I was transferred. Shortly thereafter, said other service writer decides to get in touch with the owners and say that I'm stealing commission. The way commission works is this. Service writer, whoever sells the job or part, gets some. Person performing the job gets some. So if you do both, you get more on that specific job. Pause here for a note. Well, I'm doing my sales job long-term by now. I've informed customers on previous visits that they're coming up due for such and such services. They come back and ask for me, because let's face it, I know my stuff, to get said services completed on schedule. Thus, they're coming in requesting services. Returning to the complaint that I'm stealing, the other service writer complained that because I'm not actually doing the work, I shouldn't receive any commission at all for services. He backs it up with the fact that customers are coming in requesting services, and therefore I'm not actually doing any actual selling, simply benefiting from customers crossing my path who are asking for commissionable services. Keep in mind, these are customers I've reached already and put in for future sales on top of new sales that I work for on the spot as well. The owner decided to take his side, thus my new job description is to simply service write, no commission, don't perform services, customer service only. You don't actually sell. These customers come in asking for these services, so you shouldn't benefit from this. Again, I'm fully aware that these are my previous customers whom I'm given heads up that they will soon be due for certain services, but I keep my mouth shut. Alrighty then, I won't actually sell. I work for a bit of spare income. My husband's a wonderful mechanic who works at my original store, and he makes the big bucks and flag hours. Within a month, sales and services dropped dramatically as customers weren't coming in requesting commissionable services, and I'm no longer pushing sales at all. Why make them money if I'm not also making money? I'm not even allowed to perform the services, so there's no way that I can make commission at this point. Sometime later, the owner drops in wanting to know why the store suddenly stopped making sales, so I told him, I don't actually sell, so my commission stopped coming in, sir. A good meeting with the other service writer later, and I moved back to my other store, redeemed of any accusations of theft, with a raise, commissions are back to the way they used to be, and my sales have never been better. The other service writer, he's just a technician now, not even allowed to work with the customers at all. Maybe a small victory, but a victory all the same. Whoever thought that repeat customer loyalty isn't selling should be fired. That's the foundation of a strong sales career. They maintain client relationships, leading to repeat business and recurring predictable revenue. The idea that repeat customers are no longer being sold to is absurd. Good for the owner, recognizing your skill set and compensating you for it. And our second story. Boss punishes my wife for marrying a doctor. She gets served a bitter dose of karma. I'm a doctor. My wife and I met at the hospital when I was a resident and she was a student, and she ultimately got a very good job at the hospital with no help from me. Her new boss was shocked when she found out we'd been dating for almost a year. We got engaged, and during my last year of training, we got married. For people who don't know how much resident physicians are paid, my wife made significantly more money than I did at the time. Right before we got married, I signed a contract with a practice that would move us out of the state at the end of June, about a year later. She enjoyed her job, and her supervisor was very nice to her at first. We had a beautiful wedding and a fantastic honeymoon. When we came back to work, we were both deliriously happy. That is, until she walked in that Monday afternoon. Her boss looked at her without cracking a smile and says, "Why did you come back? You're a doctor's wife now." Mind you, my wife made a lot more than me. Her boss was no longer Smiles at that point. She worked second shift while I was primarily day work. We would see each other 10 minutes in the afternoon and then some weekends. In her job, she had to take call a week at a time, rotating between about 5 people, which would sometimes get her out in the middle of the night. It was not unusual for her to spend most of Saturdays and Sundays at the hospital as well. When her schedule for the first 6 months of the new year came out, with her supervisor knowing she was leaving in June, she thought that it was a little harsh. She showed it to me, and I realized just how masterful a job her supervisor had done to totally screw up her next 6 months. She'd scheduled her to work every major and minor holiday from January through May, New Year's Day, MLK Day, Valentine's Day, Easter weekend, during these sports events that went on for a week in April where we lived, and finally Memorial Day. Much of the schedule was not overtly obvious, but there were many subtleties that caused major effects. Instead of call rotating 1 week on, 4 weeks off, my wife was scheduled for a week, then 2 weeks off, then another week, then 3 weeks off, all to get it to fit with the holidays. We were already scheduled to be off the week of Valentine's Day and already had plane tickets purchased. Her boss told her that she wasn't allowed to take off that time because she and her SO had plans. Fortunately, we had an email saved showing that she had approved that time off months earlier. The revenge comes in when my wife worked her schedule without complaint. She was scheduled to work Memorial Day weekend, and she already knew that all her coworkers and supervisor had plans and to be out of town. 2 weeks prior to Memorial Day weekend, my wife submitted her notice saying, "There's just too much to do. We have to pack our house up since we're leaving town 2 weeks later, blah, blah, blah." The hospital's HR department accepted it without blinking an eye. Since there were no other people to cover her shifts, her supervisor was forced to cancel her trip and cover the holiday weekend. She lost out on plane tickets as well as a deposit for her trip. I had to work that weekend, and I took great pleasure in seeing her supervisor working. In our job capacities, she had to interact with me, and you could tell from her face it looked like she was drinking sour milk. I made it my mission that weekend to speak to her whenever I could. I may have let it slip that my wife was out of town visiting friends that weekend. What does being a doctor's wife even have to do with anything? What was this person's point? I totally have no idea what they could possibly mean by that. She played a nasty game and lost spectacularly. Karma at its finest. And our last story. Neighbor claims half the driveway. Surveyor proves she owns nothing. In 2017, my significant other and I moved into a cozy apartment located on a quiet street. Shortly after we moved in, we met our neighbor, Linda, who lived in the adjacent apartment. Linda was an abrasive woman with a somewhat abrasive manner, but initially she seemed harmless enough. On our second day there, Linda knocked on our door with a pointed finger and an authoritative tone. She declared, "Just so you're aware, I own exactly half of the driveway. You can use the other half, but make sure you don't cross over." We exchanged glances, but figured it wasn't a big deal since the driveway was huge, more than spacious enough for our car and hers. We politely nodded, agreeing to her terms. "That's perfectly fine," I assured her. "We appreciate you letting us know." Everything seemed peaceful for about a month until one morning we stepped outside to find a neat line of large rocks carefully placed straight down the middle of the driveway. They weren't small either. These were hefty enough to require effort to move. "Guess Linda's marking her territory," my partner joked. We shrugged it off because even with the rocks, we still had ample space. However, as the weeks went by, Linda's rock boundary began to mysteriously shift. Slowly but surely, the line moved closer and closer to our side of the driveway. Each day, we'd notice it creeping in a few inches more. One evening, my partner and I returned from a long day at work to find the rocks positioned so close to our side that we barely had enough space to pull in. Feeling frustrated, I carefully moved some rocks back toward Linda's side, trying not to damage anything. Linda must have been watching from her window because she immediately appeared on her porch, arms folded, eyes narrowed. "Excuse me," Linda barked. "Don't you dare move those rocks. You're infringing on my property." Surprised by her aggression, I calmly replied, "Linda, we're not trying to cause problems, but these rocks keep shifting onto our side. We barely have room now to park." She scoffed, "Nonsense. I own half this driveway and I'll decide where my half is." Realizing there was no reasoning with her, we decided to contact the landlord. The landlord, a kind and reasonable man, let's call him Mr. Jack, listened carefully to our concerns. He promised he'd look into it. True to his word, Mr. Jack arranged for a surveyor to visit the property and conduct an official boundary survey. Linda was conspicuously absent the day the surveyor came, but we saw her peeking suspiciously from behind her curtains. A few days later, Mr. Jack came by with the official survey results in hand. He knocked on our door with a grin. "You'll never believe this," he chuckled. "The entire driveway actually belongs to your apartment. Linda doesn't even own an inch of it." He posted a copy of the survey results clearly on a stake near the driveway. Linda soon stormed out, face flushed with anger, pointing at the paper in disbelief. "This is wrong," she shouted at no one in particular. "There must be a mistake. I've parked here for over 10 years. Mr. Jack calmly explained, "Linda, the survey doesn't lie. You never had any legal right to the driveway. The previous tenant must have allowed it out of kindness, but that kindness ends now due to your behavior." Linda was furious, but had no recourse. She tried complaining to the city, but they confirmed the survey results. With no other option, she had to move her car onto the street, grumbling about it every chance she got. Afterward, peace returned to our driveway. Linda learned the hard way that goodwill and communication might have given her continued use of the driveway, but her pettiness cost her dearly. It's always satisfying when petty neighbors try asserting dominance only to have it spectacularly backfire. Linda could have enjoyed years of free driveway space with just a bit of courtesy, but instead she chose rocks, hostility, and entitlement. It's hilarious and oddly satisfying how her insistence on exact boundaries ended up proving she had no rights at all. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.